A change occurs at that precise moment. You become silent, not shouting, not furious, just quiet. You keep it a secret. You don't post it. You just melt away into your own universe. At which point everything begins to shift. She doesn't notice at first. She believes it's simply another phase of your life. She's accustomed to your availability, responding quickly, providing an explanation, attempting to make the things she keeps shattering. She is assured of your focus, and she has become reckless due to her confidence. However, when you stop speaking, the quiet grows louder than all of your words ever stated. As you can see, silence has an odd sort of authority. It's not begging, it doesn't pursue, it doesn't clarify, it simply exists. And that life begins reverberating within her head in ways she not under control. Abruptly, she begins to question where you are, your actions, and more. Most importantly, why she is unaware no longer. The man she believed she understood turns back into a mystery. The paradox is that most men never comprehend. When you give up attempting to make, when she recognizes your worth, she begins to feel it. The lack of your voice results in room, and that room starts to feel eerie. Your final words will be replayed in her head, looking for hints. She'll see your quietness throughout the hours you spent to send her a text. Additionally, something changes. Due to the addictive nature of attention, you simply removed her preferred drug. This is not about having fun. It concerns finding your center again. The individual who can leave while maintaining composure is the someone who gains respect without requesting it. As you converse more, the more you attempt to make her understand, comprehend, the less you are present becomes. However, when you retreat, when you let your quiet do the talking for you, she starts to experience what words can't accomplish: uncertainty, loss, and contrast in emotions. That's where it is. Contrast in which desire is rekindled, because women are not attracted to men who chases. The man who vanishes is missed. With intention. The former. The predictable abruptly turns into the unknown. She believed it would always be suddenly, a question mark appears. And that question mark begins to take charge. Her mind. Everything changes when there is silence because it compels reflection. It forces her to face what she assumed. Additionally, while she wants to know if you've moved on, quietly, you're turning into the man I've always wished you were: independent, peaceful, and untouchable. Thus, if you've become silent and remain silent, since your silence is a tactic, not a sign of weakness, it's a new beginning. And eventually she'll sense it immediately, profoundly, and agonizingly. Before we begin, keep in mind are you prepared to master dating and yourself? Game. I have my entire course waiting at the Podia.com's Stoic Couple website. Once you sign up, you're in for life, with perpetual access to all Futures books, series, and lessons. Begin your journey right now since development doesn't wait. Let's get started. Section 1. The change in psychology that occurs when you stop talking. As soon as you stop speaking to her, something delicate but potent starts to occur, not only in her thoughts, but also in the equilibrium of emotions between you. It's as if the whole dynamic is reset due to, for the first time, you have removed something she believed to be hers: your pay attention. Most men are unaware of how their presence gradually fades into the background. Sound. They text and talk too much. Too much, too many explanations. They attempt to correct every miscommunication, soothe every storm, and consistently demonstrate their value. And by doing so, they establish their worth. Foreseeable. However, as your voice wanes and the she used to sense your energy disappears, it strikes her brain in a manner that words could not. The quiet turns into emotional staleness. It annoys the beat she was accustomed to. Initially, she will attempt to explain it. She'll tell herself that he's probably busy. Half of her phone will be used to browse through anticipating the appearance of your name, half feigning indifference. However, each hour that feeds her and moves silently. Ambiguity. Because women experience a sense of belonging through constancy. Additionally, when that consistency falters, it causes a deep seated reaction, fear of disconnecting. That anxiety doesn't manifest as panic. Correct. Away. Curiosity is the first step. She begins to consider you when she's not intended to. She questions whether you've gone on. She plays back previous exchanges, simply to keep in mind your energy, tone, your presence. At that point, your silence begins to talk louder than you do never did. I don't need you to, it says. Confirm me no longer. And this is the irony. Your absence gets increasingly more potent than your presence ever was, since silence inspires creativity, and the power of imagination is always greater than actuality. She begins to fill in the gaps, imagining you grinning in another location, concentrated, carefree, and changing. Her ego is burned by that picture because she understands she no longer has authority over how you sense. The invisible shift is this: the point at which emotional leverage shifts sides. You're not responding to her anymore. You're not circling her feelings anymore. Now that you're back at your center, she can sense it. It's not conceit, it's spirited disengagement. The message is quiet and serene, saying, and that I'm fine without you. Despite being unsaid, the message rewires the whole game. Attraction is reversed, back to you. Since what she genuinely desires, but she will never confess, it is a man who is independent of her, focused to feel strong. Thus, when you stop speaking, comprehend this: she won't leave you. You're allowing her to experience life without your vitality. Additionally, that the realization will always be more painful than anything you want to say. Part 2. Why women are more affected by your absence compared to your presence. A woman may not keep in mind everything you said when you were present, but she will never forget precisely how you felt when you halted being present. That is the human paradox, psychology. Being there is consoling, but absence leaves a lasting impression. When you were available at all times, she didn't need to experience you. She could simply reach out, send a text, give a call, and you'll show up. Your energy was consistent and available. It became ingrained in her daily routine, something she had implicitly relied upon. However, as soon as that beat stops, her mind, her nervous system detects does. A void is created by silence, and the questions begin to reverberate in the emptiness. Why does he not call? Did I also push him far? Is he in a relationship? Those not all thoughts come at once. They come in gentle waves at first, then more powerful until they begin to drown her. Tranquilly, since men miss women are emotionally absent physically. They don't only miss your voice and face, they long for the sensation of being wanted. And once that sensation goes away, it causes an emotional retreat, similar to an addict who isn't getting their fix. For this reason, your absence turns into magnetic. You're not trying to find her, no longer. She must therefore pursue her own interest in you. She makes an effort to avoid it. She will appear aloof, post images, act as though she doesn't give a damn. But all of this is a performance meant to conceal the reality. She was influenced by your silence. Mind. The majority of men never comprehend that women are rarely brought down by words, but distance does. Due to the fact that distance produces imagination, and imagination is what keeps her up at night. She begins to imagine yourself changing, growing icier, more powerful and intelligent. She questions whether she was one more chapter in your tale. and she begins to be haunted by that mystery. This is not a form of manipulation. It's the organic result of restoring equilibrium. When you spoke excessively, providing she felt she was explaining too much and doing too much, secure but uninspired. However, now that you've stopped talking, she feels attracted to you but unsafe. That contrast in emotions, comfort substituted by uncertainty, rekindles the appeal. She was unaware that it was fading. Your absence intensifies your presence. When you don't text for an hour, it feels like a assertion. You remain silent every day. Serves as a reminder that you have crossed back into your dominion. She starts to understand that she didn't own your pay attention. It was being borrowed by her. And now she feels the price of losing it. What she assumed. For this reason, silence is always the best option, since she was in that silent distance, does more than simply miss you. She begins to recall your identity prior to her attempt to alter you. Additionally, that version of you, the self-controlling man, is the she will never forget it. Third section, the instant she understands, she became emotionally unstable. There is a silent, nearly imperceptible moment when, at last, she senses it, the absence of emotional restraint. It doesn't occur during a dispute or when you leave. It occurs every day. Later, when she looks at her phone, she finds no rationale, peruses previous messages, and sees that you haven't contacted them. It dawns on her then. She is no longer understands your thoughts. Initially, she makes an effort to remain calm. She will reveal she's all right and you're not worth considering. However, the quiet begins to murmur more loudly every day. Each and every unanswered text that she fails to send turn into more substantial. She shares each story with the hope that it will feel more empty when you don't respond. At that point, her thoughts starts to spiral as a result of your silence makes her face a reality she's been staying away. She was never in charge. As you can see, emotional regulation in it's not about who speaks in a relationship, most or who prevails in a dispute. It concerns who establishes the emotional cadence. Additionally, when you cut off communication and take away her ability to anticipate your next action, that uncertainty. This is the source of emotional gravity. She begins pursuing your vitality rather than your words. Women are insatiably curious. However, desire flourishes in ambiguity. When you were constantly accessible, she felt secure but lacking inspiration. When you stopped talking, you turned into erratic. And uncertainty leads to stress. She is awakened by that tension at evening. That tension is what makes her check your profile again and again. Here's the secret most men miss when you're silent. She's not just wondering about you, she's questioning herself. Did I do something wrong? Was I too cold? Did he finally stop caring? That's the change. Her ego begins to crumble under her own doubt because women gain power through reaction. You've also taken that away. Your coolness compels her to sit in agony, to experience the strain of her personal decisions and the more profound reality. It's not love that makes her miss you. Not yet. She misses you because she lost command. She longs to be able to forecast your feelings, a sense of necessity, the capacity to be aware that she might always yank you back. And she senses that now that it's gone, imbalance on a daily basis. But that's where you regain your power. The man who can remain composed around her, who doesn't respond to her in silence, distance, her games, and her posts, turns into the man she admires. Since actual strength is not found in uttering the appropriate action, it originates from saying nothing when you had the opportunity to say everything. At that point, she understands she's not the focal point of your world of emotions. Yes, you are. Additionally, in that understanding, she becomes uncontrollable while you obtain tranquilly. Section 4. How your silence sets off her introspection and remorse. Being silent is a mirror. Additionally, when you raise it, she's compelled to confront herself. When you pause speaking, she doesn't simply stop voice. She no longer sees her own reflection. When you were around, she was. She was once validated by attention, which made her feel selected, unique, and wanted. However, now that it's gone, leaving her by herself with the question that all women dread: what if does he no longer perceive me in the same manner? She initially objects to that idea. She attempts to divert her attention, surround making noise, scrolling endlessly, and going post stories and go out. Distraction, however, does not make silence disappear. It intensifies it. Each phony chuckle, each late night reflection, each scrolling her notifications always end with an empty message: insight. The one man who once gave a damn no longer does. No longer. And that's where contemplation starts. Painfully and slowly. She begins to play back previous exchanges, the ones you attempted to clarify personally, where you put forth effort, where you gave her a chance. She practices your tone of patience and understanding according to what you say, the minor details she rejected when she believed you would never go. At that point, regret begins to show, silent, unseen, yet weighty. You see, silence teaches, not punishes. It allows her room to view the portions of herself that you used to shield her from. When you were constantly accessible, so she didn't have to consider regarding the impact of her words or deeds she was aware that you would still arrive. However, now, the area you've made compels her to face the truth she evaded. There are repercussions for actions. She won't tell anyone about this part. She won't acknowledge that your silence made her feel insignificant. She will never admit that seeing you annoys her, not bothered. But she knows in her heart something changed, not within you, but within her. Since the woman who once thought she could always catch your eye, but it has to live with her own echo's choices. And that reverberation, that internal dialogue gets louder over time. I pushed him away, but why? Why didn't I? Admire his composure? Why am I now concerned? It's those ideas that restore respect, not what you said, not what you did, but her own understanding of what she had lost. Your quiet turns into the area where her regret develops as she thinks more deeply. You no longer attempt to demonstrate your value, and that compels her to begin. She realized it herself. Attraction is reborn in this way, not through absence rather than effort. Because being silent doesn't only alter how she notices you, it alters her perception of herself, and after that, she will never again will I look at you the same way. Section 5. The influence of emotion self-control and disengagement. Being detached isn't about acting as though you don't take care. It's about having a different kind of care. It's the silent change from attempting to control results to become an expert in your own vitality. When you end the conversation with her and turn that focus inward, you start to become aware of something strong. There was peace, never in her answers. It was constantly in your self-control. The contemporary man is perplexed love that is attached. The more he thinks he will be seen more, the more he gives. However, emotional disengagement reverses that delusion. It isn't the lack of feeling, it is under its control. It's positioned in amidst chaos and deciding not to become agitated. Because after you, instead of responding to her actions, you begin taking the lead in the dynamic. That's where your silence assumes a sacred quality. Each time you avoid the temptation to text her each time, you opt for composure over conflict. You learn to use your feelings to your advantage, not undermine you, and she senses that change. Women have a strong sense of intuition. They perceive when a man no longer requires outside confirmation. Your quiet exudes in contrast when it comes to strength instead of resentment. You see, the origin of emotional detachment is of power that is masculine. It's not noisy, not hostile, it's silence. It's the capacity to leave without feeling resentful, to desire, to love without holding on, not in a desperate manner. The world imparts knowledge, men to pursue their desires. Stoicism helps men become what they want to be. You stop when you embody that. Dispute your worth. That's what transforms everything. She might not comprehend it initially, the serenity, the mystery, the distance, but she'll feel it. She'll realize that you're not attempting to regain her. You're winning. Give yourself back. She is drawn in by that. Because every woman secretly longs for a man who leads without coercion. Being self-mastering does not imply repressing feeling. It indicates that you are in charge of it. You feel compelled to make contact, but you use that energy to further your goals. You experience the anguish of separation, but you make use of it to strengthen your discipline, and the change occurs at that point, when quiet turns into power and self-control turns into allure. The less you try to impress, the more ironic, the more she starts to sense your influence, not due to your manipulation her, but now that you're centered, uncommon, untouchable, and grounded. She senses that you're no longer at peace, depends on her, and that insight she is both humbled and intrigued. This is the true meaning of the Stoic path, to stand erect in the face of uncertainty, to love without becoming someone else, and to allow silence speaks for itself. When you arrive at you don't need to prove that point, anything, your vitality turns into the message, your composure becomes the lesson, and your disengagement turns into the cause. At last, she honors what she once disregarded. Section 6. When she arrives back, how to react in a stoic manner. When your quiet starts to reverberate within her, if you keep your mind open long enough, something will happen. Occurs, she returns. It might begin tiny. A story response, a random text, a query that requires no response, an apology that sounds informal, perhaps, but carries an uneasy tremor. It's no accident. That's the weight of your silence is finally releasing her opposition. However, this is where the majority of men don't work. They await that message, as if it were a signal for help. Additionally, when it gets there, they dash back in. Too much talking, too much emotion, letting go of all the authority in their silence produced. Avoid doing that. The man who was stoic understands that being silent was not a punishment. It was in cue. You continued to speak, to control her. You ceased speaking, to become your own master. Thus, upon her return, that mastery must be demonstrated by your energy. Slowly read her message. Take a breath before answering. If you do respond, please let your voice convey strength and calmness, not enthusiasm. You should speak as though you're a man who's been enjoying a good life and not waiting. She's trying to test your patience, even if she is unaware of it, because she secretly wonders whether your quiet was either a sign of strength or simply plan. This is the reality. The man that a woman is most attracted to cannot be out of balance emotionally. When she notices that you're not looking for validation, her admiration grows. When she believes that your life hasn't fallen apart, her attraction resurfaces without her. She is not being ignored by you. You're just no longer circling her. The world you live in is larger now, and she senses the separation. Should you decide to reply, do so from plenty rather than necessity. Be succinct, be explicit, get grounded. You are not required to play. Calm but cold. You don't have to demonstrate that you've evolved. Your vitality will say it. The former chaser is led by silence. The man who previously clarified now allows silence has purpose. She might put you to the test once more by sentiment, remorse, or deceptive tactics. Remain calm. Keep in mind that stoicism is not about regulating her. It has to do with mastering you. Your tranquility has vanished, negotiable. When you're calm, you teach her without ever using words, that you've progressed past emotional reliance. And that's when the power dynamic is permanently reset. She understands that you don't require her approval and that insight turns into a magnet. Since all women long for a man who can love her with all your heart and yet be free. Thus, when don't be silent when she returns. Become a sign of weakness. Allow it to rotate into existence. Pay attention to her, talk less, and have greater significance. This isn't the man who left. You are the individual who changed in that version of you, and the quiet is the person she will never wish to lose. Ultimately, you will arrive at recognize something that most men don't take action. Silence does not mean that relationship. This marks the start of clarity. It's where you come to an end. Pursue love and begin to be a peacemaker. As soon as you cease communicating with her, you weren't losing her. You're discovering yourself once more. There's a sort of strength that comes only in silence. The loud performative, isn't it? The world sells you confidence. It's a more profound kind. The type that is not in need of to demonstrate, not to convince. Doesn't have to plead. It's the type that just is. When you sit in that quiet long enough, your mental faculties improve, your feelings more at ease, and your presence more substantial. At that point, people start to feel you in a different way. It's not that you're louder, but you are an expert at exercising restraint. She will also notice it. She will detect the change each time she sees your name. Mind. You've changed from being the man who he went on to explain himself, who needed to be comprehended. You are now the man who lets his energy speak for him. That is the essence of true attraction. Not depth, but noise. Not talking all the time, but silence that has meaning. This is the fundamentals of Stoicism, to manage what's within your grasp and let go of what isn't. You have no control over her emotions, her timing, or her choices. However, you can regulate your response. Stillness is preferable to panic. Guidance over diversion and development excessive confirmation. When you begin to that silence no longer equates to emptiness, it turns into evolution. Know this. Silence makes it clear who's genuinely associated with you. Individuals who are only affixed to your focus will drift off. People who sense your essence will return. In any case, you've stopped measuring, so you win. Your value based on the reactions of others. You have begun to gauge it by how you can stand in peace in your own isolation, at which point everything changes. The energy you wasted. Pursuing another person serves as fuel for your goal. The time you used to spend, it becomes time to explain yourself, devoted to developing oneself. The approval you once sought turns into unimportant, due to the fact that your silence has already confirmed your development. Allow the world to misinterpret you for keeping quiet. Let her ponder the situation. In your head, allow your absence to your words could never do the job. Due to when peace gives birth to silence, it becomes your loudest words. It discusses self-control, emotional restraint, and inner fortitude. What happens when you stop talking? Shift. It's not that she loses you, because you discover your power at last. Your silence will no longer be a response and turns into a message. Being heard is not necessary for me to be, I got it. My presence is a testament to itself. Additionally, from that point on, you don't ever chase again. Prior to leaving, keep in mind if you're prepared to master the dating game, and my entire course, is awaiting you at thepodia.com's Stoic Couple website. Once you sign up, you're in for life, with perpetual access to all Futures books, series, and lesson. Begin your journey right now since development doesn't wait.